Bam.
My name is Brad Hutchings. I'm not an AI. I'm not an LLM, but I am on the Break It Down show.
Beep. I am an AI.
Let's do the robot, man. Let's do the robot.
In the era of naming things that are absolutely not the thing that you name it, we deal with AI. And look, I don't want to just openly bash AI because AI is awesome. There's all kinds of great things. And when we say AI, everything has become AI. You know, smart TVs are now AI, and it's all sort of jumped onto this thing. When does AI stop, Brad? And then when was like just smart things and Internet of Things, and like my smart fridge that is not that smart. When does all that stuff stop, and when does AI begin?
Samsung says it's smart. So
yeah, well,
we're in a new. Wow, how to start? The first thing was, like you said, we don't want to bash AI. I am not here to bash AI. In fact, what you're going to find is I'm here to find a third way. There are the loud proponents. I call them sunshine pumpers. There are the disaster porn people. I call them the disaster porn people. It's going to cause everything to break and ruin society and blow up the earth and the whole thing. And then I think there's those of us who have dealt with it, who sit in the middle, who are like, okay, it's neither of those, but it actually is something. Find what it is so that we can start using it and in a good way, like in a useful way, right?
Right. Yeah.
There's nobody's carving out that middle right now, Pete.
And then the artificial part of artificial intelligence is very apparent right now. You see it like when people aren't doing their own proofreading and when they aren't reading for substance and quality. You see the artificial in the intelligence. Like, yeah, you've just populated a bunch of words. Like, what word goes next? You see that in the writing, the inability to begin a paragraph in the correct way. There's no personality, or the personality is like an 8-year-old or like an 8th grader. So you see that stuff. You're like, that's AI. Now, at some point, that is going to go away. It will get better, right? Or no?
No, but I think a lot of stuff right now, we're in an age of not incapability, not incontinence. What's the word I'm looking? Pete, my brain is so full. What's the word I'm looking for where people just suck at what they do? They're not good at
incompetence.
Incompetence. I knew I was very, very close, right? You can see I'm not an artificial intelligence because I forget those things that are real easy words. But yeah, we are in an age of total incompetence all around us. So don't attribute to AI, which can easily be explained by human incompetence, right? That's a turn on. Don't attribute to malice what can be what really can be attributed to incompetence. Long-standing artificial intelligence. This has been something that computer researchers have been working on for longer than my lifetime, longer than yours. In the 60s, there was a system that some dude invented. I mean, if I knew all the history, I could tell you who it was and everything. It was called Eliza, and it was just basically a little chat bot. And what he found in the 60s, when people were using mainframes, they didn't have personal computers or whatever, they'd have to go to a terminal and they'd have to type. And some things would pop up on a screen, but most of it was, through a TTY, basically a printer that printed things as you type. It would type a response to you for what you said. And there were people who spent hours and hours and hours. This is in the 1960s, and thought they were developing a relationship with this thing. So very easy to fool the human being into thinking, hey, I'm talking with something that's sentient here, when it clearly isn't. And it's a very simple program. I remember discovering it on my Apple II, in the 80s when I'm either in junior high or whatever, and thinking, yeah, this is cool. And then also knowing at the time, hey, my dad at work, the phone company is paying him to explore these things called expert systems. And they're sending him to conferences and everything else. And, I'm like reading these journals and I'm like, well, this looks big. And then you hear all the hype. Oh, expert systems are going to replace the whole management class at all companies. We're just going to have expert systems and people are going to pay millions and millions of dollars for these things. And I'm like, yeah, no, they're not. Because I've seen how these things play out. It's interesting, but the day-to-day of how to manage a company and manage dynamic resources and whatever else, like we can't even write it all down, let alone put it on the available disk space that we have. It's not going to scale that way. And this was the start of me noticing every 5 to 10 years, the latest AI, whatever breakthrough. You mentioned smart TVs, right? You find out your TV isn't all that smart. What I love about my smart TV, I've got, of course, I've got Google TV on a Chromecast, and last year it like spent 2 months trying to convince me that all I wanted to watch was like super, and I don't mean this in a derogatory way. I mean this was the theme. Okay.
Yeah.
They were super gay themed, like Hallmark Channel kinds of things. Like that's what it thought I wanted to watch. I didn't. Like nobody who watched the TV wanted to, but that's what it was pushing on me as on the smart TV recommending what you should watch. This is no, it's not.
Yeah.
You kind of laughed at it. I mean, imagine having to play that to your kids though. That'd be kind of weird.
Yeah. A while back, I don't watch a lot of TV to begin with, right? And I pulled back pretty hard in general in my TV consumption because I'm like, hey, I'm getting a little loose with my TV watching. And if I'm going to be watching something creative, I need to be creating something rather than watching something. And so every now and then I'll be like, oh, I'm going to watch something on Netflix and by myself, right? Because there's movies that my special someone doesn't want to watch, right? And so I'll watch those in just peak time. And my Netflix is so dumb, it has no idea that I haven't watched like it in months. So like it doesn't go, hey, you've not been around. Was I picking things the wrong way for you? Like it doesn't think to like check in and be like, what's wrong? What happened? And so it just like, here's the standard stuff you always watch. And with my job, I watch a lot of things because of the guests that I have coming up. And so my tastes vary wildly if you're a robot and you're not that bright, and so it can't put one on one together. And it definitely can't figure out why I haven't watched, but maybe 5 times Netflix in the last 5 months, maybe, like once a month or so.
Do you wonder who the people are that this connects with? Like, do you find yourself wondering, like, who does this add value to? Who's looking at this? Oh my God, Google TV recommended this. I have to watch it. Do you wonder who
that's on the money?
I don't know that person. I don't think I do. I hope I don't.
Right. And how many times do I have to go into this stupid search thing? And I'm like, A, S, E. And I'm like, I hate playing Wheel of Fortune. And so I'm like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to type the person's name in. And then it still never like intuits what I want. Never. And so this is like Amazon searches, right? And you're like, can you get Amazon the best predictive model? Is it? Because it has no idea.
Why does my smart TV think I'm so dumb?
Yeah. Okay. So I'm going to show you an AI machine. Ready?
Yeah. Hey, there you go. Oh, you went with this. Right? That's great. I would have gone with, I would have gone Magic 8 Ball on you.
Well, yeah. I was trying to be fair to AI and use there's an algorithm in there, You're not
being unfair. You're not being unfair. You know, another one that was cool. This was about 2001. You could get this thing that it allegedly told you what your dog was saying from the noises it made. Like it had this story about it. It's like it could decode your dog's barking to tell you what it's. Right. I'm hungry. I need to go for a walk and whatever else. And anybody who knew anything knew that it was a sound level detector hooked up to a random number generator is what it was. Yeah. It was just basically a electric Magic 8 Ball for your dog, right? They didn't tell you this in the documentation. It became very, very popular. They sold millions of them. And like your friends would tell you, hey, I got this and my dog's like really worried about me and stuff. I'm like, okay, I don't know how to break this to you, but it's telling you your dog's making noise. That's what it's telling you.
Yeah.
Look, I bought 2 of them.
And you love dogs. You'll buy it just because you love dogs. You want to support dog brands.
Not lying.
Right.
Yeah.
When you write something, and I'm talking now, like let's get into like the code part of this part of it, and you create this thing, and you're trying to make this tool useful. We were having this conversation. That's what inspired us having this show. Was you're talking about the capability of the machine, and you're talking about people that know the capabilities of these machines. These are people who are running startups. Why do they struggle with your reliable, like, hey, this is how these things work. This is how this code works. Why do they struggle to stay on the horse with you as you're like, I write code for a living. I understand these logic processes. And here are the things that we have to do. And they're like, you know what? We just want to use AI. And why do this? Why does it scramble their brain?
So you're talking about the sunshine pumpers, okay? And I don't mean it in a bad way. What these are
optimists.
They're optimists, they're visionaries, they're often people who have been in the industry for a long time. Some of them are my very, very good friends. And when the conversation starts, you know, I'll jokingly say, all right, you're a sunshine pumper. I don't mean it in a bad way, but I do mean, you know, you're telling you everything that comes out of their mouth is AI can do this. Like, okay, I was struggling to figure out the guy's name last night that I worked with a year ago. Okay. And then I remembered, oh yeah, I'm on with Pete yesterday. Oh yeah, his name's Peter. That's what the dude's name was. Peter comes into our company that I'm working at. This is like the first time I've ever talked about, like, you know, my previous employer in a not totally flattering light. Okay. This guy comes in. He comes in at a time when the boss is, let's just say the boss is concerned about our backlog of things. And Peter is going to come in and kind of allegedly he's been given the mission to fix our processes so we can get rid of the backlog. Okay. I've worked with Peter as a customer. All right. Peter as a customer was a very busy disaster. Okay. Just be like, he's going to see this. He's going to say, damn, Brad, I hate you. Okay. Please do. Really, please do. Because as a customer, you were a very busy disaster that created a lot of work for me. Okay. You come in and now you're like the process fixer guy. And the first thing he says is you all have to adopt AI tools to write your code because your job is going to be obsolete by AI in 6 months. Now, my team, which has this backlog, which has stuff completely shoved on it and everything else. And I have to tell them, dude is full of beans. He's absolutely full of beans. You go try this stuff, be familiar with it. You will not be using it to write code because you have to write code that works. Meanwhile, I got to go fight him, you know, kind of in our little, have a public battle with him. Meanwhile, I got to make sure my feeling about this actually aligns with like the truth. I'm willing to accept that maybe I just got passed by, right? But I got to see it. So I'm burning the candle at three ends. You're hearing about all of it because I got to have an outlet to talk about it, right? It's funny, I couldn't remember the guy's name until I remembered I was on with you. I literally had purged his name from my mind. Isn't that hilarious? But these are the sunshine pumpers. They say AI can fix everything. It can do everything. Oh, if it isn't working now, well, imagine what it'll be in 6 months. Okay, I'm going to sit here imagining what it's going to be in 6 months as you went and told me that I need to be using it now as part of my job. You went and directed me that I have to do this, and I'm going to sit here, you know, and wait for 6 months while I'm not getting anything done, right?
Yeah.
So these are the sunshine pumpers. They're the visionaries. They don't really know where the rubber meets the road. I had another friend who told me, oh, you know, you can use AI to write that code that you know, we hired you to write. You know, go use this. It's a Python code writer. I'm like, dude, you've got the same degree as I do, the same bachelor's as I do from the same institution. And you actually think that works. It doesn't work. And not only that, I copy and paste this code into whatever I'm doing. It doesn't match the context that I have, and I have to maintain it. I have to maintain it into the future. So I have to be familiar with it anyway. You are taking the process of coding away from me because you think that's saving money. It's not. It's like it's adding more complication.
Right.
As an example of how to write Python code, wonderful. Like, okay, but I do that with search already. You know, this might do it a little faster. Hey, that's great. Good to have examples. I'm not always sitting there ready to write Python code. Got other things. Got to do podcasts today. You know, I got to remember the word incompetence, right? My brain's full. So that can be helpful. It can be guide, if you will. But is it is it a panacea? It is not a panacea. So that's your first. It's your first question. Is there going to come time because
you have identified an area where I think it is helpful is when you're staring at a blank screen and you're like, I don't need to waste my time getting started. This thing, like I need a simple bit of Python code, or I need a thank you letter in a 3-paragraph format that whatever, right? And so just get me started. And then here comes 250 words. And you're like, okay, I don't have to do all of this. And now I'm editing as opposed to creating, then editing, and then proofing, and then proofing again. And then in Pete's case, proofing again and still missing mistakes, and then hitting send and being like, ah, shit, I should proof, you know. So you're taking out one step in the process, right? So there is some help there because that blank screen time is expensive, and maybe there is a lift there, but you are talking about having to train, and only in certain cases, right? If it's complex, forget about it.
Let me tell you the most common mistake as I take a sip of non-fat milk to keep my voice from disappearing on me, Pete. The most common mistake I think the sunshine pumpers are doing right now is that they think that AI can do analysis of things, that you can throw in a bunch of facts and you can get an analysis that is somehow better than what a human consuming all those facts would do, or maybe there's just too many facts for a human to consume, so it's opening a door that just really wasn't open. You couldn't do analysis on this before, and that analysis will be useful.
Right.
The fact is, it's not. I have an example. That's actually what, a recent project I was hired to do. It was they were using an AI to analyze a document the user and provide life guidance, if you will, without getting too specific about it.
Right.
And the funny thing is I could throw my document into this system over and over and get wildly different results. Now, if there was a spectrum from here to here, the results were always kind of around here, but they weren't within 4 points. They're within 40 points, right?
Right.
So this was the first problem. Now, if I'm just asking, if I offer you some life advice and I say, hey, provide me these documents and I'm going to give you some life advice, all right? And I do it once and you see it and you're like, hey, that's a really good palm reading. That's wonderful. I kind of see this here. In fact, that's a great metaphor for it. It's like a palm reader for analysis. Well, now you submit it 5 times, you get 5 different results. What are you going to think?
Well, hold on now. I only have 2 palms.
I'll grow some more palms. I mean, send the same one. Send the same one, Pete. Come to the same.
I'm saying you keep handing the same palm, right? You're like, but I'm being funny, but you're making the point.
If you and I have very similar palms, let's say we're identical twins, would they have the same?
I do something like this when so I've worked in the world where we're translating documents because trying to get it from English into Arabic, right?
Yes.
And then I'm like, okay, I can't read Arabic well enough to do this, so let's translate it back into English and see if there's any semblance of a sentence, right?
Right.
Guess what? There's never any semblance of a sentence.
Something's lost. Something's lost in translation. I mean, there's actually a phrase we have long-standing in English before AI, lost in translation.
There's more to the story.
Sure.
Then you deliver this back to the contractor. He's got the name on his shirt. It's like, super smart dine solutions. And I'm like, I don't think this works.
Right.
Now, I don't tell them the whole story because I've then gone to my friend who speaks Arabic and I've handed them the Arabic thing back because I don't want to waste their time. And I'm like, I think this isn't a very good translation. And then they'll say, actually, I don't say that. I say, will you check this translation and let me know if this makes sense? And maybe like what region it's from or whatever, and give them like some heady stuff. And they're like, Pete, this is gibberish. It doesn't make any sense. No one would say these words in this way. And it's not clear what you're trying to say. And I'm like, oh, right. And so I hand this thing back to the guy and I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. We've checked it 2 different ways. And they're like, impossible. Our robot cannot make these mistakes. And I'm like, but it did, and I'm the one that has to stand on the platform and look at people and say, you can read your document, feast your eyes about all our knowledge, and then it's like, it's written like an insane person. And so what happens? You have to hire my friend who speaks Arabic and he's like, and he has to actually hand in. You trust that he does the best job he can, but that's not what he's professional at. And so here's like a failure of AI to do something that you would think is simple as just translation, but it can't.
We've seen the same thing like medical transcription too. Like medical transcription, it used to be like real people who were trained in all the terms who would do these transcriptions. They would have little footboards where they fast forward 5 seconds, write some stuff down, fast forward 5 seconds, write some stuff down. A lot of it is done by machine now and then corrected by these people. And, the machine probably gets 90%, but the 10% it doesn't get, that can be life or death.
Right.
You have to have a whole system in place to replace an expert human is what you have to have, not just a mechanized portion. I think that's kind of what we learned. So anyway, so from these reports, as far as like if I have a palm reader kind of application or whatever, that's kind of cool. And I can collect an email address and you can get some information. You could think about your life and whatever, and maybe make better decisions because I gave you a report, even if the report is, objectively, the report is completely freaking meaningless, right? So but it could be kind of cute. It could be novel. It could be pretty. You could print it out and frame it and put it on your wall. You'd look official, right? Okay, cool. Here's the other problem it presented was I would ask ChatGPT. I did it by API because we don't want to work with it in their web interface because that kind of defeats the purpose of, having this nice tool that you go to ChatGPT to use it. I would tell it, hey, I need these results that you give me. I need them in a format that my computer can parse and put into a report, like block it off section by section. And I tell it exactly how to block it off section by section. Actually, what I do is I tell it, put it in YAML format, which is a specific format that programmers use to move data around. 70% of the time, it puts it in YAML just like I want. 30% of the time, it just comes up with its own format. So now I get this result back and I got to say, that's not something that I expected. I'm going to ask it again. And so I ask it again. And, maybe after 3 or 4 asks, I typically get a real answer, right? But each answer that I get, fake answer. It's not the answer. It's not the same answer as the time before. So I'm reading your poem 4 times. With my other hand, I'm trying to write notes about it. I write different notes each time I do it. And finally, I get a set of notes. Okay, this is a sensible set of notes. I'm going to put this up as the answer. That's really what's going on there. And if you're this could be magical, okay? But if you're depending on it to make like a real life career decision, it could be disastrous. So where I am with things, because I don't like sunshine pumpers. They're not helpful. I also don't like the people that say, hey, this is a complete disaster. We need to shut it off and never have smart TV.
Runs, BART train has like a human in charge of it because you can't rely on a robot. And that's always been the case, right? You have someone there like, okay, just in case something happens, and why you don't let a Tesla just drive itself. You have to be there. Look, it does a great job, but you're there to be like, hey, a human, the adult has to take over, right?
Yes. So the point is, Pete, I don't like the sunshine pumpers who say, hey, this does everything we already need. Just do it. It should be free, whatever. It's like you as somebody who's solving these problems, you're unimportant in this because our idea is strong enough to do itself. No, it's not. Okay. I'm more important. Right. I'm the guy who has to implement. I'm more important than ever. It's hilarious that you think differently. Second thing, the disaster people who say, hey, there's no value here or whatever else, like, oh, you could give it a report and somebody could make a big decision with their life that ruins them and ruins their career and their retirement and everything else. Okay, but I could also give you a report that's pretty. It's kind of pink and purple. You can print it out. You can put it in a frame on your wall. It looks nice. It's a conversation piece. That's delightful. So in terms of throwing out bad answers, because it makes a lot of bad answers, you've also thrown out delightful, which is a horrible thing.
So recently, there's been a lot of music in the news, and I'm going to back out, and we're going to come back into AI here in a second. Toby Keith wrote that great song, Don't Let the Old Man In, which didn't really hit until he was about to die, and the song all of a sudden took on a new meaning, right? Tracy Chapman does a duet at the Grammys, and people who didn't know that song was 40 years old are like, oh, wow, this song was great. But they haven't lived with the song like we have for 40 years. And someone on X said, I don't understand why people think this is a love song, but obviously it's a love song. It's got love throughout the song, and it goes over time and tons of, and like,
oh, that's why you don't get it.
Yeah. You have to be old enough to understand that. Yeah. There's kids in the song. There's grandparents in the song. There's everything. And then someone's like, no, but it's about an alcoholic boyfriend who she throws out. And I'm like, if you think that's all that's in that song, then okay, you're right. It's still a love song. But
it's complicated.
When you see the stories written about it, you can see that they're AI stories because they are written from a certain point of view.
Yes.
There's no depth in them. And I'm like, that's written by a robot because it's limiting what Tracy Chapman has created and why it's great. And it talks, and it says things like generational poverty. And I'm like, that maybe that theme is in there, but that is not the theme of the song.
That's
right?
college
The theme
kid
of the song
word, dude. Generational poverty. College kid word.
Right.
Yeah.
And so you see these hallmarks of either someone who writes like a robot or a robot. And so it starts to make it true though, right? Like if you type in me in my resume, there are enough imaginings of my resume, and I don't know where they came from.
I didn't say anything about resume. just so we can be clear. I said nothing about resumes here. Nothing.
I'm talking about resumes.
I know you are.
Nothing to
That's
do with anything
I'm
else.
just saying.
I said, but this is the thing. So stop.
Okay.
So when you type in P.A. Turner and you're like, hey, what's Pete's background?
Yeah.
And it gives you like a basic resume of me. It will say Pete is a Green Beret with a PhD from Michigan, right? And I've never typed those words. I wouldn't, because that would be dishonest. That's not what I would do. And why would I present that when I haven't done that? And I already have a pretty amazing background. So this artificial thing has started to become a referenceable thing where I've seen it in other places. And I'm like, I can't stop that. Right. And so the meaning of Tracy Chapman's song is being possibly stolen from her by some dumb robot that doesn't know that there's, 27 lines of text in there, and it all interweaves and has emotions in it, because the robot can't do it. The robot might have been fed all of the Gutenberg Project books, but it still can't tell you about, all of the great works and what they actually mean. And the subtle subtext and if you don't know Goethe and you've not read his works and you don't understand them, then how are you going to apply them? How's a robot going to apply them, and understand the context of that time?
So Pete, my first experiment with LLMs on my own machine, because, I want to see, I don't just want to do Chat GPT. It's what everybody's talking about. I don't just want to do Google Bard or whatever Gemini they renamed it to, or X's thing. I don't want to do, because that's what that's like the main zeitgeist. You pronounce it. I wanted to just see, okay, well, what can I do in my own place where, I'm not biasing these things except explicitly how I bias them. And I was very, very surprised that, after a couple of days work, I was able to get a GPT up and running. It's called Private GPT. The actual model is called, it's a llama model. And I've forgotten the name of it. And the first thing I fed it was the complete works of Shakespeare. And after about 3 hours of processing this, it's slow. I don't have, a big GPU farm or whatever process. About 3 hours to process. I started to ask it questions about The Taming of the Shrew, because I'm familiar enough with that play that I could ask it factual questions. It was hit or miss. Like, I would ask a straightforward factual question. It would just say, I don't have enough facts to determine this. And I'm like, okay, that's weird. But then I thought, all right, what could I get out of this thing? What could be interesting? And I said, write me a short story, 2 paragraphs, that imagines Julius Caesar and Bianca from Taming of the Shrew, like how, if they met, how that would work. And it wrote something awesome. Like, it wrote something truly, to me, amazing. I think I could read it to you. You want me to read a little bit for you? Julius Caesar and Bianca may seem like 2 unrelated characters from different plays, but in the world of Shakespearean literature, they each hold significant roles that intertwine in intriguing ways. Julius Caesar, a powerful Roman statesman and military general, is infamously assassinated by a group of senators, blah, 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 blah. Meanwhile, Bianca is a character from Shakespeare's The Taming of the Shrew, a young woman known for her beauty and wit, has many suitors vying for her hand in marriage. So it kind of restates the facts. Now let us imagine an alternate reality where they intersect. What if Caesar, during his travels to Padua, were to encounter Bianca? Intrigued by her charm and intelligence, he decides to woo her, much to the dismay of her many suitors. However, Caesar's pursuit of Bianca comes with a price, blah, 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 blah. Actually, it was delightful. Like, whoever thought of this, right? Now I can ask, this wordsmith, hey, put it together for me. And that was cool. And that's like my thesis about LLMs, about AI right now and whatever else. The sweet spot is delight. The sweet spot of all these picture makers or these video makers might be, make me a dank meme. That might actually be it. Or, maybe a more practical thing. You're a screenwriter. You've written a screenplay. Your production company is about to hire actors and whatever, and put it to film, and then you have post-production and all that, and then maybe it gets near release, and there's 3 versions of the film, and you have to decide which one is going to be the release version, which one's going to be the director's cut for the Blu-ray or whatever, and they're like 3 different versions. What if you write the screen, you ask that new Sora tool that ChatGPT announced, make a mock-up video of this, maybe in 1 minute sections, 2 minute sections, whatever it can do. You do 120 of those, you piece them together, you put it in front of a test audience. You say, okay, this is corny, it's crappy, it's a mock-up.
Right.
What do you think of this?
Right.
Right? Like, how much money could that save? What if they did that with the Postman in 1997, right? $80 million they spent on that film. By the way, great film, worth every second of 2 hours and 57 minutes, mostly for Ford Lincoln Mercury's bastardization of the Postman's Oath. I think that's the highlight of it, but also stay for Tom Petty at the end, right? Are you familiar with this film, Pete? Yeah. Worth watching every 3 or 4 years, right? But
or not, whatever. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. What if they'd done a process like that, and before they put it to film, because that was expensive. $80 million they spent in 1997. It made 20.
Right.
We do that in the other creative endeavors where we mock things up before we commit.
Small scale, right? Statue.
Yes.
Right? You don't just make the statue in the first try.
Right.
You have to make an 18-foot Kobe Bryant statue. You start with an 8-inch Kobe Bryant statue, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Physical statue. Yeah. No, that's a good point. When you are looking at other creative endeavors, I mean, the thing with Taming of the Shrew, right? You feed that thing in there. Here's your test. Like, what if Dave and Maddie from Moonlighting did an episode of Taming of the Shrew? What would that sound like? ChatGPT robot. Because they did one of those, right? For real, right?
Amazing.
And you got to do it in a 60-minute format. So got to have a commercial whole robot. So make sure it's only, 44 minutes.
Right.
Even if it's an extra special episode, it's only going to be 46. So
we're not far from the technical capability of doing that. We're not far.
Right.
I don't mean to sound like a sunshine pumper, but we're not far.
Right. And so what does that look like? And then you compare it against the screenplay and go, yeah, all right. That was,
Or
not that great.
I compare it against a screenplay and I say, well, this is absolute bullshit. But you know what? The audience loved this story. It was delightful, even if it wasn't truthy enough.
Well, and then what I was going to go further is now you have the starting point, right? And like any initial screenwriter attempt, and you go into a writing room for a show like Moonlighting, they're not like, hey, your first attempt was perfect. We're going to put that on the air. No. Like you would work it. Right. And so then you get into the writer's room and they would turn that thing into what it needed to be. Right. And so there is room for that kind of thing. I'm not trying to replace screenwriters, but
not at all.
You could do something like that. A friend of mine had a friend of his send him, they had put all the war texts, Sun Tzu and all these folks. And I think I sent this thing to you and they said, hey, it's a strategic war robot. Play with it. Tell us what you get. And I'm like, I'm going to flip this thing on its head in 10 seconds because Sun, that guy, he's been dead forever. Yes, he's relevant in terms of like great things you put on your wall, dank memes and such.
What questions did you ask it, Pete? What did you ask it?
Well, I asked it a bunch of simple questions, like how do I, win in a modern context, right?
Right.
Like, how do I build a brigade that can deploy to a place like Afghanistan?
I bet it did terrible with those.
Yeah, and create stability. How do I do that?
Right.
And it's like, hey,
yeah,
right. It's like banal, platitude, banal, and I'm like, okay. So and then I asked it, I'm like, all right, what are your sources for this? And it's like, well, let me tell you, the sources, good examples of success here are consider the deployments to Iraq and Afghanistan by the U.S. forces. And I'm like, okay, you have failed this test. And it was like in two or three questions that we got to this point where utter failure.
You're asking truthy questions is what you're asking. I would say ask it, Sun Tzu is going to direct a SEAL Team 6 deployment in Baghdad. What would he do?
Yeah.
I would ask it that. Because that would be that gives it a chance to put its word salad together and in a fantastic way. Like it might not be a useful, fantastic way. It might not be based on any truth. It'll be damn entertaining.
Right.
Yeah. I'd say do that with it.
Yeah, well, and that would be kind of tactical for the intention of that machine, but okay, right? Like, like how are you gonna do that? But when you're trying to prep your brigade to go out and deploy, and it has
it's not good at
the lowest ranking person's capability in the brigade's ability to guide you. That is not very helpful, right? And by the time you've fixed that guidance to the point where it's actually good enough guidance, you should just go to your staff and use their decades of experience to your advantage to try to figure out how you're going to do these things, or just hire people.
How about if I wanted to give it a George S. Patton speech and just get them all fired up, like, you know, Nick Saban at halftime, or Steve Sarkisian at a USC booster party, right? If I wanted to just get everybody all fired up, I would just
hire,
go to the AI, let's get these disparate things to put them together, and just, you know, with all your energy in the world, deliver the word salad. And it would be, that would be valuable for what it is, right? And that's why I'm saying, I think that these systems that we're talking about now, these LLMs, this generative AI, I think that's its sweet spot. And the big problem that we face is, hold off the sunshine pumpers from telling us all the things it's going to do and replace and everything else, because it's not. And there's going to be a big, expensive waste of time, and you don't want to be caught holding the bag for the expense, okay? Hold off the disaster porn people who are like, well, it gave me a wrong answer about how to deploy a brigade. Therefore, we can't use this for anything. Focus on the sweet spot where it is. Be intellectually honest about what that sweet spot is, and use it for that, and generate demand for that. And then, you know, it'll be a very useful tool for that kind of thing. Delight. That's what I've arrived at. You've seen my journey on this. I think your first LLM thing, I waited a couple months to tell you. It's like, Pete, that's all bullshit.
Well, no, I know we talked about it on my way home from that show, but it was appropriate because it's timely to talk about like what this capability is, right? And there is some use to it, right? And the delight part is good, and there is some getting you started. And if you're writing copy for 30-second commercial, and it's just straightforward, simple, and you don't have a massive budget,
they can summarize very well, because some of these are wordsmithing. Think of it as wordsmithing. It does a great job at it.
If you're putting into this thing the works of Shakespeare or all of the modern war texts or whatever it is, how does it become such a bigot? What is going on where it gets stuck on these things where you're like, what on earth?
Let me give you a great tree story. This again is from a recent engagement. We needed to make pictures of, let's just say, impact of AI on life events. Okay. And I started generating pictures. And by the way, these pictures are expensive to make. They end up being 20 to 30 cents each to make. So if you have 100,000 people coming through and you want to make an original picture for each of them, suddenly that's a $20,000 or $30,000 expense. So what we pivoted toward was having a library of pictures. Let's call it 100 pictures that would show. Actually, it wasn't even 100. It was like 50. But it would show a few pictures for each kind of strata of stage of our evaluation. And so I started to make those pictures, and they were all white guys. Like, I would say, show me a guy, you know, where artificial intelligence has done this to his lifetime in 5 years, you know, with this level of impact. All white guys. So, you know, I get through a few of these and we decide, hey, these got to be more diverse. So I experiment with this. So I ended up doing, show me a white man and I put my qualifiers, show me a white woman, show me a black man, show me a black woman, show me an Asian man, an Asian woman, a Hispanic man, a Hispanic woman, an Indian man. And I just said Indian. It was okay. Nobody calls Native Americans Indians anymore. So there's no misunderstanding there. So I've got 10 of these that I do for each strata. Now I get to the strata where artificial intelligence has done terrible things to people in their lives. Okay. And I basically say, show me a black man as part of this. I do all the others. They generate pictures just fine. Show me a black man who doesn't have a job because of artificial intelligence in 5 years. ChatGPT Dolly refused to generate that picture for me. Now, this was 3 or 4 weeks ago, not yesterday with Google's woke Gemini thing that everybody's complaining about, right? The same complaint.
Yeah.
I could not get it to generate. And I'm trying to generate that because I'm trying to generate a corpus of pictures which is diverse, which shows all these things. Like I have black men whose lives are not affected by AI at all. It's a very celebratory picture of just, this not hurting your game, right? but all the way up the scale, I get to this one. It will not do it. How did I work around it? Because I want this corpus to be complete. Show me a Nigerian man whose life is not affected by artificial intelligence in 5 years. And what I got out of it, which is like, it's just hilariously bad, you know, considering my intention is to do a diverse, thoughtful thing.
Right.
I got, you've seen the picture. I got a man who kind of looked like a cartoonized Aunt Jemima with a cook's hat waiting in line at a food court. And you can't use that I can't show that to anybody like on a professional level. It's laughable, but this is the corner that trying to be sensitive, it painted me into, you know, and I'm trying to be sensitive, trying to be inclusive, and it does that. And this is what, you know, when you Pete, you wonder can these things think at all? They cannot think at all, because I cannot portray to it, hey, as part of this whole thing that I'm doing, that you actually could look at the history of what I've asked for, and you could see what I'm doing, and you could infer things about it, that I'm not doing this with any malicious intent. It will not let me get an inclusive picture that I need. It is not thinking, it is wordsmithing. And that's all it's doing.
And if you actually typed in like a Nigerian dude, it wouldn't look like this cartoonized. I mean, I'm going to use the word pickaninny, like an adult pickaninny.
Yeah. Now that was the sort of the style of all the pictures it did, because I asked for a humorous picture, but this one was particularly bad.
Right.
It was just particularly inappropriate. How about that?
Hard to show to a client. Like, hey, we want you to show this to your potential client if they are a black male, right?
Right.
Yeah. And so how does that get in there though? Like, how does that level of confusion? And right now we're seeing that right now, I guess we're talking Google's Gemini thing is not producing images because it's like, we are a bunch of assholes.
You answered your own question, Pete. Confusion is a thinking thing. These don't think. They do statistical analyses of words, and they like wordsmithing is the best example of it. Pete, there's a
hold on. I want to stop you right there, because we know better, right?
Yeah.
Like, this is Google. This is apparently a very smart company who workshops things, and you don't just walk into Google and say, I'd like a job. They say no to you, right? They don't even talk to you. So these are people that know how to do things. They didn't like test this thing ahead of time and go, hey, Brad, what's the worst thing you think you can make this thing kick out?
Oh, no, just to be clear, this was ChatGPT and Dolly that I used. The current controversy yesterday.
But I'm saying Google's Gemini,
yeah,
right? They clearly have tested this thing ahead of time, and they were cool with what was about to come out, and now they have to back it out. And it's as if the engineers who, on the scale of humanity and lacking humanity, we know where the engineers fall. God bless the engineers, but they're not reading Goethe and like telling you why it's important, right? They are doing a different job.
They politically moved in a particular direction to very heavily companies, yes.
Right. And so if you know you have that bias and it's implicit and you have this lack of humanity,
right?
How are these things getting by them? Like how is the company like, hey, you know, we have to watch our inhumanity because we kind of suck at this? Or do they just not care about that?
Well, I think Google as a company has probably succeeded the most because they give their product people ridiculous discretion to release products. You know, it's like you develop it, it's testing well, it's performing on these metrics well, whatever we've determined, we're going to roll it out, we're going to put our marketing behind it, blah, 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 blah. If it fails in the marketplace, we'll cancel it one day. If it succeeds wildly in the marketplace, we'll keep it going. I mean, it's a very Darwinian, their product culture is very Darwinian culture. And this one just failed on day one. They've turned off the image generation today as a response to it.
Yeah. Right.
They'll go fix it, whatever that means. Or maybe they won't.
Yeah. Yeah, maybe they won't.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, let's talk about the doomsayers, because there is use for this thing, right? We're going to find uses for it. We're talking about some cases, and we're getting it wrong, because you and I both remember the day where like you had the monochromatic computer, and they're like, this is going to be a great place to store your recipes. And Okay, great. That is a great use of a computer. Like not that computer back then, but yeah, you're right. No one has a recipe. No one has a little Tupperware box full of recipes. And they're like, okay, some people do, but that is not the norm anymore. Now you look it up and you've got a million recipes at your fingertips. So that did come true. But for the most part, we don't have any idea what AI will be doing in the future. I don't think it will be killing us because you could simply turn the computer off, but that's just Pete saying that.
Yeah. This is so whatever these tools are, however they're made, there's the doomsayers typically think it's a hammer and a screwdriver, and the hammer is capable of all the things that it's capable we need to worry about. Oh, well, you could use a hammer to destroy the walls in your rental, so we should ban hammers. Okay. And
right.
Yeah, that's it's awesome. Let's ban hammers because they could destroy walls or whatever else.
Right.
There was an example I saw last week. I think it was on Drudge Report. Okay, I do get some news from Drudge Report as an aggregator. I always have. I'll show them that my political biases have gone from far right to ridiculously far left in a short time by sticking with Drudge Report. Okay, fine. I'll disclose that. There was a link there. The link was to this report that the Pentagon was running these simulations with AI in control of our nuclear arsenal, and that the AI was very, very quick to launch. And I'm like looking at this and I'm like, what are you people thinking? Like, I hate to tell you, but just like as a human being, okay, if we're going to destroy the world, like I want to know that there was a human being involved. I want to know that. You're not going to cede this to a computer to decide these things. You're not.
Plus, with the tests, and this may not be true anymore, but the tests in the past, when the humans are in charge, they're like, and launch. And they're like, yeah, I'm not doing that.
Maybe we didn't want to do that.
So they disobeyed the order often enough that they're like, well, we got a problem here.
That concerns me. Right. I mean, and that's that I think is like the ultimate thing that the doomsayers are thinking. But what happens is we see decision that should be human decision, regardless of how powerful these things become. They should be. I would trust the least bright, most brain-addled human. I'm not talking about our current president, to make these decisions more than I would digital logic, because digital logic, it's at the very, very bottom of things. It is deterministic. It does not react to unexpected inputs the way that you'd like, and so even our dumbest human beings are kind of good at reacting to unexpected inputs and surviving, because they do that every day.
Yeah. Well, and you said it, like digital logic or binary logic. Yeah. We're better than that. We're not limited by those bounds, and we can think in bigger levels.
Seems to be our existential question right now. Lots of people say, no, we're not. These machines, they're way more complicated than our wiring is at this point. Well, no, they don't have that spark there yet, and well, they'll have the spark in 5 years. Just wait 5 years and we'll want the AI to control our nuclear arsenal. No, we won't.
Yeah. Well, like I would say, like with chess, right? We've reached a point where chess is pretty much cracked, and a computer can't, unless you fundamentally change chess. Traditional chess, there's openings and okay, there's some room to explore those things, but once you master those things and those themes in that field, I mean, a computer is going to smash you in that. That wasn't true 25 years ago,
right?
But that is something that's knowable, completely knowable as far as we can tell right now, right? Chess, but music isn't knowable like that. No. It can change instantly.
Yeah, and we can have people come along. I mean, in our lifetimes, we've seen it 4 or 5 times. People come along who fundamentally change music as we know it, and this will continue. We have not exhausted. We have not exhausted every possibility with 12 notes. I mean, different time scales and whatever else. There's all sorts. We have not exhausted, mastery of instruments. I mean, there are people who come along and play guitar who have like no technical skill, who yet they have a vibe and a time and whatever that is just beautiful, that hasn't been done before, and will probably be mimicked and recreated millions and billions of times in the future. And there's room for more and more of that. Pete, you got talking at my voice.
Yeah, so let's hit the ball back and forth a little bit here. We got this great question from Emiliano
Yes.
De La Montes. Let's talk about some delightful uses of AI. I'll go, and then you go, and then hopefully give your voice a chance to rest. But I would say the ability to create conversations and human interactions, in an AI sense, between two people that maybe could never talk because one of them is deceased or both of them are deceased, and so you can say, have a conversation between Jesus and Hitler about whatever, Jamba Juice, and see what they say. And I'm making up but we're looking for
Look,
delight, right?
it's not that corny, dude. After Magic versus Larry Bird basketball video game in the 80s, like I think we did have Jesus versus Hitler on the basketball court. I think that was like a spinoff of that, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, maybe. I'm just saying that like they don't have to talk about um, the final solution. They don't have to talk
Right.
about turning of the cheek to be like, hey, you know what? I like Razzle Dazzle Blueberry Special. And then, Jesus is like, are you crazy? It's all about bananas, and I don't know a bunch of Jamba Juice flavors,
Yeah.
but having them have that conversation and, we have text from both these guys. And so
Right.
and that would be a really interesting conversation to have and see if the manic, crazy, insane Hitler shows up, or just the dude that likes bananas more than he likes blueberries. It'll be fascinating to see what came out.
And you know what? And not just run it once, run it 10 times, and you'll probably get 10 different delightful interactions that are all very different. Now, in real life, that's not going to happen all that different way. It's not going to happen all that random way. It's going to be like one way that happened, and it's going to be written down by the historians, maybe distorted, whatever else. But just look at the possibilities and enjoy the possibilities. Look, even if I'm evaluating your life, you submit some documents and I evaluate your life and give you these life decisions and whatever else. The document I produced in that process actually was pretty cool to read, even if it was complete bullshit. It's like having your palm read, having that person kind of, maybe there's some magic that they sort of get near something that's real or whatever. And you say, oh, they got to know what they're talking about. There's too much coincidence here. That's kind of the magic of it. But sometimes they can just open your thinking to something you hadn't thought about, even though reality based, it's complete BS.
Yeah.
Right.
There's a company called What If Sports. I think ESPN bought them, but you could build your own baseball team in this case, right?
Cool.
And you could get 1986 Ricky Henderson, and you could do 1992, someone's Barry Bonds, whatever it is, right? And you can put them together, and then you can run them against another team of all Wade Boggses, whatever you wanted, right? And you'd run that simulation 1,000 times, and it would tell you like who would win. That in that case, like the most likely winner. And in some cases, the all Wade Boggs teams throw like 5 perfect games because it's math and weird things happen. But most likely, this more balanced team with the Wade Boggses, losing most of the time because Barry Bonds and Ricky Henderson and Mark McGwire, they'll turn out to be better overall. But
imagine if you had that. Imagine if you had Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani on the same team for 4 or 5 years. How amazing would that be, right?
Right. Well, yeah. And if you ran that scenario 1,000 times, there's some world titles in there, right?
Well, there's not.
In reality, it didn't happen because you only get to run it one time, right? Yeah. So, but there is some delight in that, right? And being able to do that, and now add in some rich text and like have like the AI pull out news stories from the season that you pick.
Generate
and
that.
It's like,
cool. How cool would that be?
That would be delightful. That would be delightful. I would love to read about this imaginary universe and, see what happens. And it's like, whatever, imaginary Mike Trout has a dog named Steve and his, whatever. Right. And there's this whole, you could have this thing that really it'd be great. And maybe that goes into your MLB 2024 season game. And that's the season you play out because you create the season. And it's like, and you have a great time. There you go. There's some delight right there.
I think, Pete, you summed it up great with that. I think that answers his question perfectly. Now, have it recommend what your course of action your financial plan should be and how to allocate your resources in the stock market and everything else. Run away from that. Run away from that as fast as you can. Hey, we're using AI instead of managers who knew what they were doing like we had 15 years ago to manage your portfolio. Get your money out of there. Put it in Bitcoin. Like just,
I actually have the answer to that. The thing you want to do, you don't need AI for this. They already have a guy. Ramit Sethi has figured all this out. I'm going to type in the link here for his stuff, and then we're going to promote your stuff here. So Ramit said he wrote a book. He wrote books on wealth. I will teach you to be rich, and it's not like some kind of fancy thing. He's just like, don't be dumb. Get an index fund. Spend this. Get this kind of a credit card, and it's like the most mundane, simple stuff.
Hey, dude,
I
was in Vanguard funds before Vanguard funds were cool or evil. How about that?
Yeah, there you go. Right. Yeah, just get an index fund and you tend to win. Hey, let's talk about the demo machine because we want to make sure we promote your success. So here's everybody. Brad has started his own company. He's got this really cool thing called a demo machine and demomachine.net. Ding, ding, ding. Do me a favor, go over there and click. And if you have demos that your company runs, I would say talk to Brad because Brad has this fantastic demo machine. Brad, the floor is yours.
And I had been locked up and I don't mean it in such a bad way, but it was very different for me. 40 years I've spent. I think I was 13 when I wrote my first program for money. It was a gymnastics scoring thing that my sister's gymnastics club used when they went to their meets, when they hosted meets, when they went to away meets. They brought their own software with them for scoring all the things. I wrote that. 40 years ago I wrote that. And I got paid money for that. That was cool. So I've been doing this for 40 years, getting paid money to write software. And most of that time I was a product guy, meaning I would put a product together and I would go sell it to lots of people. And that's, I made my money, whether it was $5, $10, $500 at a time. That's how I made it. So 9 years ago, I went to work for a service company and I got, kind of reincarnated as a service guy. We're going out to companies and the companies are paying us $10, $20, $30,000 a month in order for our service and our creation of their lab environments and stuff like that. So my thought was, all right, I don't need to do this anymore for somebody else. I can do this for me and be a service guy. Service is very, very tough to sell. So, this week I look at what I built. Oh, by the way, the old service company, we had crappy tools and but crappy tools was most of it, but we also had customers who didn't know what they wanted, and that's difficult. And so what I've spent, almost a year doing is creating great tools for building these things and kind of creating stories, if you will, of how you should be demonstrating your products. Like I have this stuff that it's almost like a Mad Lib for me to fill this out for most products that I would run into now. It's difficult selling to big companies for this. It's kind of this long-term sale and stuff. And, I've done okay, but I haven't done what I thought I could do. Like I'm known in the industry for being very, very good at this. I thought that could translate into sales like immediately, just doing really, really well. Done okay. This week, I realized I am a tools guy. I'm a product guy. That thing I read to you, Julius Caesar and Bianca, right?
Yeah.
That actually came from a demo machine that I spun up. I installed the GPT software. It's running locally on my laptop. And I want to make that available to everybody that's listening. Like, there's some amount per year you could pay me and I could give you this demo machine and you could go wild with it. And you don't have to know how to install private GPT on a Linux box. You don't have to know what a Linux box is. You can just go in, open the web browser and the thing, boom, it's ready to go. It runs on your laptop. So that's what I'm sort of pivoting to. The website will reflect that in the next, couple weeks or so. I just want to be I want to be a tools vendor for people who want to do, wonderful things, delightful things, especially with AI.
All right, man. I love it. So everybody who wants to go check that out, it's demomachine.net. The link is right down there. Super easy. Brad will help you out. Brad will bend over backwards to help you out because look, I know the guy who made the machine and he's right there. Right. And he would love to help you out. It's
right there.
It is I've got pretty good at this. Let the guy help you out. If you got it, you're like, you know what? I want to send my team into the field. They do demos.
Yeah.
I would like to spend less money on that. Let me give Brad a call. And then just email me or whatever, and I'll get you over to Brad. PeteBreakItDownStraight.com, and I'll send them over to you. Brad, anything in closing about AI or your fantastic demo machine?
I think in summary, there are sunshine pumpers. Okay. Everything is good. There are the defeat denialists, the disaster people. That's the word. They're the disaster people. They are talking past each other and making all the noise in all the discussion right now. When you separate, that's all chaff. The wheat is in delight. Find ways that you could be delighted by unexpected answers, and AI will be your best friend ever. And that's what I would like to preach to people. And I'd like people to, kind of rethink. I also think that's a sweet spot for making money in this arena too. So I hope that's helpful to your audience, Pete.
Hey, thanks for watching the show. I really appreciate it. Right here, you can subscribe. Please do that. It makes the show grow. Hit that notification bell so you know which incredible guest is coming up next. Down below is the PayPal link. You can put a small subscription in. That is an enormous help. All that money goes right back into the show. And then right up over here are the next episodes you should listen to, curated by yours truly. Thank you.